Welcome to Side Alpha Leadership, a podcast where leaders can share their experiences and discuss what leadership means to them. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Hello and welcome to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Trying something a little bit different this time around. I'm going to do a little bit of video along with the audio. Like I've said many times, face for radio, but I want to try something a little different. And fortunate enough that he took time out of his busy schedule. Welcome Bobby Eckert back to the show. He's been on the show probably about a year and a half ago. Talked about the books that he was writing and some of the things that he was doing while we were under the COVID stuff. So again, without me rambling on, Bobby, welcome back to the show and tell a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into the topic.
First, thanks for having me, Chief. My name is Bobby Eckert. I'm a fire captain in Camden, New Jersey. I'm actually in my 19th year there, again, which is wild to say. I'm currently assigned to Squad 7, and I own Eckert Fire Tactics, which is a fire training company here based out of South Jersey. And we focus on engine truck company operations, a lot of live fire, and just building competency through confidence, and just building confidence in a positive training environment for firefighters to thrive and succeed. And I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and like I said the last time you're on the show, say it again. If you haven't subscribed to his Instagram page and gone to his website and things like that, get on there. A lot of really good information. Like I said, he's a fireman's fireman. Talks right on the level of where we are when we're doing tactics. Focuses heavy on the fire environment. I know you do a lot of live fire training. It's pretty rare with training companies where guys are doing live fire training, but you're definitely putting a lot of really good content out there. Like I said, you do some live videos just to do some uploading some stuff and keep people informed what's going on. So definitely get on there and check them out on Instagram. So I want to talk about garden apartments. We talked a little bit about offline, and they're pretty prevalent, definitely on the East Coast. In the Mid-Atlantic area, we have them post-World War II, pre-World War II. The construction's changed dramatically. But it's something that I do like to talk about because we find in today's society, people aren't buying houses like they were, or they're not buying townhouses, or maybe they're buying condos, which is pretty close to what a garden apartment is. But people are living in these garden apartments a lot longer than they normally would have when they were trying to transition into buying property. So we're finding all kinds of things in there. Like I said, you'll find the gas grills, even though they're not supposed to have them, they'll be on the balcony. Like I said, you'll find just a litany of things inside of these. I found whole motorcycles inside of apartment buildings. Biggest thing now, the e-bikes is what you're finding. Go ahead.
The scooters, they got the e-scooters, e-bikes. I mean, I see people cruise around the city all the time in them things. It's a thing. It absolutely is, and it's a cheap way to get around fast. It
is, and New York City is doing a lot of really good stuff with their e-bikes and the all the lithium-ion battery issues that they're having. We're seeing them up here, not as prevalent as they are in the city, but we're running into those little hover scooters. That's where it all kind of started, and then it just kind of evolved from there. But the lithium-ion batteries, that's presenting a pretty big issue. One of the last garden apartment fires I had when I was battalion chief in Montgomery County started with a laptop computer on the floor next to some bedding material, which is a lithium-ion battery, and that thing took off. We ended up making 9 rescues out of that. That fire spread so quick from just a small battery. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk a little bit about garden apartments and some of the things that you're seeing in your jurisdiction, and some of the ways that you're handling some of the issues that you're coming up on with these fires. We'll talk a little bit about attack lines. Sometimes you can't just go with the conventional cross lays. If a 200-foot cross lays, you have to have longer lines. So let's kind of jump into it. So tell me some of the things that you're seeing and maybe some stories, grace some people with some stories and things like that.
So I'm seeing the one thing I noticed, and lately we haven't had many garden style. I have 2 massive garden style apartment complexes in my first 2, and we haven't had a fire there in a while. And I just think it's just because of maybe the people are there, maybe taking care of the apartments. But the one thing I've noticed is they're densely populated. It's not like you don't find like a vacant apartment. Like they fill them fast with people. People are looking to move in. You can expect these places to be fully occupied. Like you're not going to find a non-occupied apartment, right? But like you said, when we talked before, because of the economy, there might be somebody down their luck that are staying with their mom, with their kids or whatever, and they're in these places. We go to them very prevalently for gas leaks. We get a ton of gas leaks in my city just because of the older infrastructure. And we'll go in there and there's 2 families living in a 2-bedroom garden style apartment. And I always just think to myself, like, wow, this is an issue. But like you said, gas grill, bicycles, maybe there's a motorcycle outside or a scooter inside. And it's not only are they densely populated, but they're just packed with people's stuff. So that makes our movement inside the building very hard, right? You don't want to. I always jump back to Fire One. When I took Fire One, they put you in the concrete room with no furniture, and that's how you learn to search. It's not like that nowadays. Well, it's not like that any day.
Right.
It's even more loaded with stuff. So you hit maybe the second floor of an apartment and get up there and get in the door. Maybe the door doesn't open all the way because there's stuff behind it, whether it's clothing or a bicycle or whatever it is. And I think that's one thing we need to maybe cue our minds in with training, like when we're training for searching or whatever it is, or movement with hose lines, we need to realize there's a bunch of people's, their lives are in this small apartment, whatever it is. So if you think what's in your house, if you have a bigger house, think of it condensed in an apartment, right? And I think that's important to cue on. And I like going to them places for the BS runs because you kind of like see the layout and stuff like that. But one thing I enjoy about garden apartments, and I was thinking about this all day because coming on here, because I've been there before, I know the layout, right? I know that like when I go in, I'm going to hit this, that, and the other. I actually lived in a garden style apartment about 9 years ago, and every apartment was the same, left or right. It was the same. You go in, it was the same exact layout. So I think knowing the layout is an advantage to us when we're navigating in zero visibility. And a lot of people, when they get in that environment, and you know what it is, everybody remembers the first time they were in zero visibility, you get that anxiety factor, right? But if you get in it and you know the layout, man, you're going to move. But then again, you're factoring in all the people's crap that's in there, and you got to navigate through that stuff. I think it's the biggest challenge that they are densely populated, not only with people, but with crap.
And I want to unpack a couple of things that you said. But first and foremost, when you talk about training, and we've talked about this with the fire engineering radio show that we do, when we talk about training and things like that, you put them in a sterile burn building. And whether it's a gas propane burn building or you're doing Class A burns, and they tell you to go in and do the search, and there's no furniture in there. And it's so unrealistic. When we do our training with Capital Fire, we will actually go to Goodwill and we'll drop like $50, and you can buy a lot of stuff for $50 from Goodwill. And we'll load these places up, even if we're not doing live fire, if we're just doing fake smoke, and let them run into a couple of couches and a bed and a nightstand. We always throw a bicycle in there, and have them falling over top of this stuff, because we're doing them an injustice if we're training them in open burn buildings, because that's not what they're going to face when they get in there. And like you said, you're running into a lot of stuff. Their entire lives are in these apartments, 1 or 2 bedroom apartments. People wise, like you said, you're not finding a family of 2 or a family of 4. You might be finding a family of 8 in these apartments, whether you've got people that are staying there or you've just got large families. And that's where they're living, and they're living in these places a lot longer. One of the other things you brought up is that you're not finding these vacant apartments because people are jumping into them because they may not be able to afford, to buy a house or a townhouse or something like that. So you're not finding vacant apartments. One of the things that I've run into, and we had a line of duty death up here in Maryland a few years ago, was the in and out of the apartment. A lot of times when a family move out, the rental company will go in there and they may strip out all the carpeting, repaint the walls and things like that. The carpeting and the padding that they're putting in there, we're finding that these self-closing doors aren't closing all the way when people exit. So the carpets are kind of chalking the doors open a little bit. And we ran into a problem, a couple of fires that I've been on, but with the fatal fire they had, the door didn't close. The fire reignited from the floor below, and it came up and trapped them into the apartment above, and fire got into the apartment, and we had a line of duty death in Maryland. But these are things that we need to really pay attention to. And one of the last things you said that I really want to jump on is, don't, be pissed off because you got to get up at 2:00 in the morning for the medical local. You may not run an ambulance or a medic unit at your firehouse, but maybe the engine company's going as manpower, staffing, or whatever. when you walk into these places, take a look at the layout. There's no smoke. You get to see the things that are in there, and you get that layout of that apartment. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, when they tap out a job and you got people trapped, you're forcing the door. You go in, you know right away. Well, in these particular buildings, I know I got a bedroom on the left. I got the kitchen that's straight ahead, and then on the right, there's a couple of bedrooms down there. So knowing that layout or having that mental layout because you've been in these buildings before for the medical locals pays huge dividends when it comes to getting a line in place and getting this fire knocked.
Well, 100%. And even the complex layout, like when you go in, like you said, 2 a.m, you know how the cars are parked. Maybe you can spot the hydrant, things like that. But it's so vital just to understand what's going on at that complex, like what's going on when you're there when it's not on fire, and the population of it. And a lot of people that I've noticed lately, and maybe you've run into it also, a lot of people my age in their 40s, their parents are living with them because they can't afford to live. So, you're having, like you said, multiple people in that building. One of the things I always think of with garden style apartments is ground ladders, right? Like we got to pull every ground ladder we have off that ladder truck and get it up, because you could have people rolling out of that place like a sinking ship. Like they're just diving, and you can see videos of it from. I mean, you rode in Camden, you know what it is down there. I mean, you're throwing places. PG's loaded with garden style apartments, and just getting ground ladders up for these people to be accessible to get down, because a lot of them can self rescue. Just put a ladder up, and they can move down. It's not a bread and butter house fire. It's more of, if one apartment's on fire, whatever unit that is, it's overtaken that entire unit, whether it's 4 apartments, 6 apartments, 8 apartments, however the place is configured. Even a bedroom fire in one unit is taking over the entire section of that building where egress needs to be made. It might be on paper to you as an engine, the first new engine, it's a one-line fire and it's a working fire and all hands, whatever it is. But, globally looking at it, because of everything going on, it might be an extra alarm just to egress the people and the residents and get everything opened up and make sure everyth's fine. But you brought up building construction. In a lot of these buildings, all the plumbing voids are stacked. So you might have a first floor kitchen fire and it's off, and the plumbing voids are going right up to the next kitchen and going up to the next kitchen. You could have massive issues. So a second line to the floor above. There's a lot that goes into it that people really don't think about. But I said this last night, I was teaching building construction, and I'm not taking a shot at any fire academies anywhere, but Fire One focuses on the single family house fire. They don't focus on any other type of building fire ever. And then you deploy these firefighters out there, and maybe their first do is all garden style apartments, and they don't know to go to the floor above with the second line or a search or whatever. And it causes problems, and everybody's playing catch up.
Yeah, and again, you said a lot of stuff that I want to touch on. Getting into these complexes when you're running alarm bells, gas leaks, or medical locals, whatever. What it looks like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon is way different. What this complex looks like at 2 a.m. You might have a fire at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You can pull a line straight off the engine and right to the front door. 2 o'clock in the morning, you're going to be dodging cars and weaving in and out. The other thing is knowing your complex. You may have to tell the ladder truck, hey, we're coming in this way. I want you to nose into me so you can have, this whole corner of the building or what have you. Ladders, it's another thing you talked about. Man, people need to understand, and I harp on this, ladders are number one for us, for the firemen, so we can get out or get in. So all ladders that are thrown, if there's a window or a balcony, there has to be a ladder going to it, and it has to be set up for rescue. Can't have any rungs inside the windows, because if we got to come out, we're coming out fast. Same thing with the residents. If they pop their head at the window, they need to be able to feel that ladder and get on the ladder and get down. So you might exhaust all the ladders off your ladder truck. That driver is going to be a busy man for the first 3-4 minutes throwing ladders. I tell my engine company drivers when I was running as a battalion chief, you've got 2 ladders that are on that fire engine. Throw the ladders. Once you set your pump and that line's going in, start helping that truck driver throw ladders. If you're running with 2 trucks on a complex like that, those drivers should be working together. You might need to think about getting somebody to the roof. It's still a thing on these fires. And then lastly, you talked a little bit about construction and what I call is the stack effect with the way these units are built. kitchens on top of kitchens, bathrooms on top of bathrooms. You get a fire in the basement. When I was running as a battalion chief, I want a line to the basement, to that apartment. I want the next line go to the floor above, and then my third line goes to the top floor and get up in the attic. Because if we've got smoke in the attic, then we need to start checking all the floors below.
Well, if you could easily find yourself in, like you said, if you have the stack effect with plumbing voids, and that pipe's going through the roof, right? So you could easily have in the cockloft of the whole complex, through a kitchen fire or a bathroom fire could overtake 3 apartments, go up and go left to right. So you need to think about that hole in the roof immediately. Like, am I putting a truck there? But if I only have one truck coming, do I need another truck company, or do you have like a special service unit, like a rescue, that you can commit to that? There's a lot of resources that need to be in play for a one-room fire, just because of the building instruction, just because of it, and how the fire is going to travel. Fire's lazy. It seeks the path of least resistance, always. So it's going to find a void and go, especially in plumbing voids. They love plumbing voids because, like you said, if it's pre-World War II or right after World War II, maybe it had like a 4-inch terracotta pipe. Well, terracotta's gone. You think they're buying a 4-inch PVC pipe? No, they're going to buy like a 2.5 or a 3-inch one. So now there's a 1-inch void going right up, and there goes the fire. It's going very fast, and it doesn't take much for it to go. And especially like a delayed response in the middle of the night, by the time we get there, it could be out the window of one room, but it'd be going right through the voids of every apartment.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that people need to understand is, if you got a 3-story garden apartment, you got fire on the top floor, you need to get people start checking the basement, because you can easily have drop down because of those void spaces. The other thing is,
it goes down always.
Yep, the typical fan motor in the bathroom, the stink motor in the bathroom. You need to get up in the attic right away, because where does that vent? That's a common vent that's going to be going up to the attic to vent outside. Same thing with kitchens. If you got microwaves, if it's vented, all of them are vented the same. Yep. And then here's one of the other things that I make sure that people have to understand is that you go into apartment, maybe apartment 24, well, apartment 23 that's next door to it, well, it's identical but mirrored. So the kitchens are back to back. So not only do you have kitchens on top of each other and bathrooms on top of each other, but they're also back to back, so they can all share that same void, that ventilation void or that plumbing void. Returns, like if you have central air conditioning, you got returns. They're all using the same returns to bring that air back in and whatnot. I had a fire when I was a lieutenant. It ended up going to 3 alarms. Plumbers are on the scene, and this is the biggest thing that you need to understand when you start reading your notes on your CAD. If the plumbers are calling in saying if they got a fire, you can automatically guarantee if it's a job, it's been delayed, because you'll know there'll be 4 or 5 fire extinguishers sitting outside of there because they were desperately trying to put this out. So the fire's been delayed, and that fire has been pretty advanced. You really need to get up in there.
That and roofers.
Yep. And roofers, when they're starting to, heating up the tar and whatnot, and that metal flashing and whatever, you have to anticipate that 911 call was delayed, especially if workers had anything to do with it, because they desperately are trying to put that fire out.
Sure.
And like I said, the dry chem extinguishers or the water cans that are in the hallway should be a telltale sign. But yeah, you definitely, it's going to be resource intensive. And for the incident commanders that are listening to this, don't hesitate to put an engine company on the roof. We've all been trained to do ventilation. If we took Fire 1, Fire 2, truck company ops or whatever, you might not be assigned to a truck company, but you should know how to ventilate a roof, just like you should know how to force a door, pull ceilings, things like that. So if I only have one truck on the assignment and they're busy forcing doors and throwing ladders, and may have to be going in with the engine company to start opening up walls, and I need somebody on the roof, I'll throw an engine company up on the roof. Grab a saw off the truck company. I need you up on the roof to open the roof. Use your resources, and like you said, it could be very resource intense. So don't hesitate to call for the task force or the second alarm or whatever it is you need. Everybody wants to come to your fire, so invite them. They're more than happy to come. If you don't need them, you can send them away. But man, it's much better to have them on the scene than all of a sudden call for them and you're waiting another 15 minutes while your crews are out in the front yard spent.
And there's a lot of evacuation needs to happen also into that. But you see a lot of videos out there of like the fire has met them at the door. They're going up the scissor stairs to the garden style apartment, and maybe it's like on the second or third level. And, it looks hellacious. And a lot of times it's overtaken the combustible exterior siding that is out in the common space, the stairwell, and it can communicate very easily to another apartment, especially if there's a window there. I see a lot of them that have like there's a door and a window, like it can go right there. So when you get up there, if you got to get water on the outside of it real quick, just a quick knock before you go in, that's fine, because you're not putting you're not transitioning, you're not putting water through a window or a door. You're hitting down all that combustible exterior siding, knock it down and then work your way in. Whenever you're met with fire, put water on it. It's not like a regular single family dwelling where it meets you at the door and you're going right at it. It's a little different because of the combustible exterior that can be in that whole area. Because not only that, you might have the wall, but you might have like the ceiling there. It can get real crazy, and that ceiling, especially on the top floor, could get in the soffit and just start going. It's very easy it's very, very prevalent, and it's very, very easy to happen. Again, fire's lazy; it's going to go.
Yeah, and like you said, if that fire is auto extending or it's leapfrogging out of a window, and you've got vinyl siding, that's why it's so imperative that you got to get a 360. You got to get your eyes on the Charlie side of that building. What's going on that rear? And like you said, hey, I got fire. I know it's in the apartment, but it's also running the exterior of the building. It does me no good to put the room out while I've got fire if it's actively burning up the side of the building and getting into the cock loft because it's burning through the vinyl soffit. So like you said, a couple of shots of water, knock it back real quick, and then get inside. And then you may have to call your second or third due engine company. I need you to get a line to the rear to make sure that we keep that in check. Don't put water in the windows while I'm in there, but definitely keep that exterior spread from going. That outside in fire, you got to take care of that. It's not a cop out to put water on it so you can go in and finish your job.
If the exterior is burning, you have to hit it, because right. If you're not going to pass fire, right? If you go in, it's still going to be on a fire while you're in there. You got to put it out, and it's just the combustible exterior that they're putting out. But if you're the first due engine officer, your sole purpose is to get first off, recon. What do you have, right? Obviously, not the fire, the building. What do I have, right? I got a garden style apartment. It looks like it's on the second level, all right, or second floor, whatever you call it, Division 2. Go with whatever nomenclature is geographical to you. So second floor, my job is to get a line to that second floor no matter what and start moving. That's it. So whatever it takes to get me there. But again, like we talked about, maybe at 2 a.m. versus 2 p.m, it might be a little harder for me to position my apparatus to get the line that I need to get in place. So I know where you're from, you guys run a longer line. Where I'm from, 200, 250. Well, for me, 200 is my longest line. But in my area, there's guys that run 250. This might be a situation where we deploy a leader line. We put a 2.5 with a Y on it. I know there's a lot of guys on like Ys, whatever. But we're going to shoulder load our 200 rear, and we're going to go. And me being the officer, I know that I've trained my guys. If I say leader line, they know what I'm talking about, and I'm going to go and get eyes on where I need to place this line immediately, because water is a contributing factor. It's going to take care of all the problems. But again, it's not like a house fire. It's not like a rear bedroom fire. Rear bedroom fire, get up the steps, back bedroom, knock it down. In this situation, I might knock it down, but it might have already been up and running. I might have had the worst action being the first due engine. The second engine or third engine might have a better time because they might find themselves in a better position because of the extending fire.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to touch on what you talked about. We run leader line evolutions in Maryland, in the Mid Atlantic area. It's an East Coast thing. When I say East Coast, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Mid Atlantic to the Northeast. We're very savvy when it comes to making long lines. You may have a 2.5 with a smoothbore on it, and you can yank that 200-foot smoothbore, grab your garden apartment or your high-rise pack or whatever, and make that 400-foot line. Maybe you already have one built. I just want people to understand that when we say garden apartment line or a leader line, we're actually going to have to make that longer line, because a lot of these buildings are terraced. They may be sitting way off the road. But you should be able to tell your guys, hey, I need to get a leader line to the front door. One of the things you talked about, Ys, and I hear a lot of people saying, I don't want to use a Y. Somebody's going to turn my water off. 35 years in Montgomery County, run a lot of garden apartment fires, 20-some years in Prince George's County, a lot of garden apartment fires. Nobody has ever turned my water off on a gated Y. Nobody's ever kicked it. Nobody's ever tripped over top of it. You can buy things that you can, when you open up your Y, you can clamp it off so nobody turns it off by accident. So I don't want people to be afraid that, oh, if I have a gated Y, somebody's going to turn it off on me. It's never happened to me. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but for the most part, most firemen are disciplined. Second thing is a lot of people don't want to use, well, I don't want somebody taking my water. If you've got a good savvy pump operator and he knows that I'm going to be pulling 2 lines off of this thing and I'm going from 200 gallons a minute to 400 gallons a minute, then they're going to pump that thing appropriately. And if you're on the line and all of a sudden you don't feel like you got enough pressure, man, you got a radio, call back, hey, give me 50 more pounds, and they'll boost your line up. So I don't want people to be afraid of, oh, I'm not going to use a garden department load because I don't want to use a Y because somebody's going to steal my water. They're going to shut it off. It doesn't happen. And
I've never seen it happen either, but I got a great tip from a captain I work with. If we're going to bring the high-rise bag because we have it bagged. If you take the hose out of the bag, you can throw the bag over the Y. And this way, everybody avoids the bag. Like, they're not going to go near it. It just like as a fail-safe. But, excuse me, again, like, if that's your play, you got to train on this. Like, this isn't show up at the fire and let's figure this out. This is a training issue. A lot of places I go to, there's a courtyard. Like, there's buildings so set far back from the street that we have to like go into a courtyard and make up something to figure it out to get to where we need to be. And if you don't pre-plan it, well, maybe you're working overtime or you've never been in that district. You have to visually figure it out. And the leader line is usually the safe play in that situation because, you can always bring enough, have the Y, bring the bag, and go. I always find that. And then we have a breakaway nozzle, so if I do stretch short, I can literally bring another length in and figure it out. So it's like having a plan A, plan B, plan C type situation, getting to where it's at. But the one thing that I find always interesting when we go to these complexes are, like, say it's building A, B, C, D, E. Nobody can ever find E. We can find A and B because they're out front. But, like, where's E at? And there's, like, it's on Walker Court. And we're like, where the hell's Walker Court at? It's not showing up on our maps. But it's the complex name of, like, it's not a street. It's a complex name. Again, if you have these buildings, get in there and walk around them. Don't be surprised. I hate being surprised. Don't be surprised. Know where Walker Court is and know how to get there.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is get on your apparatus, go to these complexes. I've told people, I said, if you don't want to stretch lines or you don't have manpower to stretch a line to do a drill, take a wheel a measuring wheel, and measure from where you're going to park to the front door. Hey, it's going to take 300 feet of hose just to get to the front door. Hey, the longest line we carry on our engine is 200 feet. How are we going to make that line longer? Let's think about it now. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's like quick. We're gonna have to pull our cross lay, break the nozzle away, put the extra 50-foot section on the end of that, and then go to town. You got to train. You got to pre-plan these buildings because fire and garden apartments, when it's moving pretty quick. Especially once it hits the cock loft, it's going left and right. And that brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about is when we talk about these attack lines. I made sure that my drivers understood that any line that comes off of their engine company, that driver is responsible for from the pump panel to the door. So any kinks, any tires, any trees that it goes around, that line's got to be moving free. So that engine driver should be the busiest man on the fire service for the first 10, 15 minutes of that fire. Once you get your pump set and everything's moving smooth, you can help the truck driver, maybe throw a couple of ladders or whatever. But that engine driver, especially if you're running a 3-person engine company, that engine driver has to be able to chase the kinks down, make sure that line's smooth to the front door, and then be proactive. If you're making it to the front door, maybe pull another line, maybe bring your high-rise pack and put it there for the next crew that comes in. But you just can't be a slave to your pump panel. And you got to be ready to do some work, especially on these garden department fires.
And communication's huge. Everybody has radios now. You remember when we didn't have radios? I always laugh about it. Like I never, my first how many years I never had a radio. So, but stay in contact with the company officer. Like, yo, I need this, I need that, and make it happen. And I always say, like, and I'm not taking a shot at chief officers, but you work for me. You don't work for the chief. So, like, if I need something, he needs something. I come priority in that situation because I'm in the fire building. I need that. But this is also a situation where I feel like the truck company gets a little more priority because they have to rush ground ladders to where we're going, and not just 2 ground ladders, all the ground ladders. Like they're all coming off. So maybe where we usually position for a house fire, we don't usually position that way. Maybe we nose in all the way, and maybe the truck backs in instead of pulling in, or backs over onto the lawn a little bit, just to get their ground ladders in a position where people can start grabbing them. Because garden style apartment fire I've been to, it's just people coming out of everywhere, and we need ground ladders.
And it's funny, you talked about maybe putting the truck in the lawn a little bit. Man, I lawn that thing. And I used to tell my guys, they were so afraid that, like, well, Chief, what if we get stuck? I've got tow trucks on speed dial on my phone, but if that truck needs to be there, you put it there. Don't be reckless, but if you need to get that truck to the rear and you need to take it off the road to get it to the rear, maybe have a spotter, make sure you're not running over holes or anything like that. But if you got to put the truck in the rear, it gets to the rear. If it gets stuck, I'll get it out. But if you as an officer can defend that it needed to be there, I'm perfectly fine with that. Matter of fact, I'll probably come shake your hand to make sure that you can operate back there. When you need to get to the rear, especially throwing ladders, getting to the roof, things like that, we might have 35-foot ladder might be the longest thing we carry, and maybe we need a 40-foot just to get to the roof line. So
you never know. And I always think of, as a firefighter or as a company officer, as a chief officer, I've never been a chief officer, but you always got to set up for the worst, right? And to me, in garden style apartments, again, the courtyard and the building that's so far away from all my apparatus, right? Like, I know that I have to bring all the equipment that's parked wherever they're parked back to that place. So what can I do position wise to get them where all their equipment in a steady streamline that way? That's my thought. So if I'm an engine and I'm like, shit, like I have to do this leader line, that means that these guys on the truck have to bring every ground ladder the same way. And there's only 3 guys in this truck. Like, shit, like I need to move out of the way a little bit more than I probably should to give these guys room to muscle them ladders back there, because we're already moving in that direction being there. Here comes a truck. They got to go the same way.
Yeah, hose lines stretch, ladders don't. So, you might have to make your line a little bit longer. One of the things that we practice and we teach is, okay, you physically can't get your unit to the rear, but I need 4 ladders to the rear, as well as hooks, saws, and things. How do you do that? So, we're going to pile ladders on top of ladders, roof ladders with hooks, throw all your tools on top of that, and then 2 dudes can drag 4 ladders back to the back of that building. Are you going to be tired when you're done? Probably. But sometimes when you go to work, you actually have to work. So we need to get the tools to the rear. Physically can't get the unit back there, but we need to get those things back there. So at least it's a good start of getting 4 ladders back there, saws, hooks, things like that. And then you can start calling for the rest of the resources coming in.
100%. I always say, like, we teach ground ladders, I always pick the smallest person in class. I'm not picking on them. I'm like, are you picking up a 35 Alkalite ladder and carrying it to the rear of a building? No, you're not. Like, it's physically impossible. I can't do it. You can't do it. But if you drag it, you're not going to hurt the ladder. Like, if you got to go on one end and drag that thing, drag it. Just get it there. Get it to where it needs to be, and there'll be firefighters there to get it to where it needs to go to do its objective. It's more about getting the equipment there so it's prevalent when they need it. But also, again, and I'm sure as a chief also, you think about this, that here comes the RIT component of it. Like, what if there's a mayday? What if there's a situation? So we all have to also initially have to make sure we have equipment back there for that also. Like, immediately. Like, we're not waiting for the RIT team to show up. Like, hey, maybe we got a fast board. Let's throw it out on a ladder and bring it back there so it's there. Or we got a RIT pack. Let's bring it back there so it's there. This is more of, this isn't your bread and butter fire. This is the one that makes you expand your horizons a little bit and think a little more, okay, what is going to go wrong, because we are going in a situation we don't go to a lot.
Right. And one of the things you talked about dragging the ladders, I try to tell people, I said, these are fire service ladders. These aren't painting ladders. If you drag that ladder and it falls apart while you're dragging it, you probably have a pretty crappy testing component in there, but you probably wouldn't want to climb it anyway. Drag that ladder. The heels, the spurs or dog, whatever you want to call them, they're replaceable. So they get worn down and you can just unbolt them and put new ones on there. The other thing that kills me is I'm getting off topic a little bit, but when we teach people to throw ladders on the training ground, like they'll raise a ladder up like a flat raise and they'll get in and they'll count like 3, 2, 1 and touch the building. I'm like, put the fucking ladder on the building. I don't care if you're slapping it on the building or not. If it makes noise, it makes noise. But this is a contact sport that what we're doing. So you guys listening out there, if you need to drag ladders, that's what they're not going to fall apart on you. And like you said, if you're carrying a 35, a 224s or a 28, a 14, and hooks and saws and all, you're not carrying that on your shoulder. Drag it. 2 people can drag that thing around with no problem.
No problem.
One of the other things that we talked about, when your truck companies are busy, obviously if you're running a 3-person truck crew, and they're in the midst of throwing ladders. Maybe you got one guy that's forcing the door for the engine company. If you guys arrive at the same time, they get a lineup in place. You got a room and contents fire. You get that fire knocked. We got to start opening up right away and make sure it didn't get up in the ceiling, make sure it didn't get up in the attic and things like that. One of my biggest pet peeves is engine companies not bringing tools with them. If you're running a 4-man engine company or even a 3-man engine company, you've got the guy that's pulling that line. That's a 1-person job. And you got the officer. At least bring a hook or something with you. So the moment that fire's knocked, you can transition and open it up real quick because that truck company might not be behind you. If you've got fire in a couple of apartments, they might be pulling ceilings next door. Bring a hook. When I was running as a battalion chief, and even to this day, yesterday we had a fire in the country-ish area in Frederick County. I'm assigned a forward position, whether it be the attic or second floor, whatever. I always bring a hook with me, always. And people look at it and say, well, you're a chief, you shouldn't be doing that. I said, it's not always for me. It's for the guy that didn't bring the tool in, but we need to open up something right away. I can lend him my tool. But bring hand tools with you because as an engine company, you might knock that fire. We need to start opening up right away. So you open up right away. You might need to vent out a window or something like that. You don't have that luxury of having that truck company with you. So don't be afraid to bring tools with you. Even if you just leave it at the front door of the apartment, you can come back and get it real quick.
When I worked at Ladder One, I always had the driver bring 2 hooks in. I can hook. My arms aren't broken. So at least it's there. It's on the fire floor. It might be laying in the hallway. I'm fortunate where I work. We have 4 in every rig. So, I'm on a squad engine. My backup guy, the water supply guy, he brings a hook in with him. Like you said, the truck's busy, especially if their search is going. If these guys are searching, they're not hooking. So if I knock 2 rooms down a fire, I got to get that ceiling open up immediately, especially if it's a cockloft or a top floor fire where there might be a cockloft. I have to get it open because I got to get that report out to you like, yo, it's up there, and that changes your whole game. That changes your entire game.
I want to talk a little bit about garden apartments. Some of the newer garden apartments, they may be 3 or 4 stories tall, long hallway runs where you may actually not even have a standpipe system in these buildings, but you might have 200-300 foot long hallway runs. So not only are you trying to get a hose line to the front door, but now you got to get them up the stairs. And then it might be, you might only have one way to get in there and you're stretching another 150, 200 feet down the hallway. We need to really be pre-planning these buildings, know where they are in your first 2 areas, saying, hey, you know what? 200 and 300 foot might not get it. 400 might get it, but we're not going to have enough left over. You might have to stretch, 300 feet of 2.5 or 3 inch and then come off of a Y with an 1 3/4 line. You may have to build a 500 foot line. It's not unheard of in today's, building construction.
It's all, so we have the Clorox bleach bottle with the rope, and I have no problem building a flying standpipe or whatever I need. If I know it's a long run, and we have a lot of newer buildings that have a long run, there's a building right down the street of my firehouse. It's pre World War II. It's Type 3 ordinary, but it's got all long runs. Our play there is I want to get eyes on where the fire is, and you might see me open a window and be like, yo, throw me the bottle. We're dropping a line out, or we're dropping the rope out, and we're going to wrap the line up and bring it right up through the window. I think in these situations, unconventional is conventional, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Like, that's what works. So it's more like making a decision on the fly. So maybe what you always do at a residential house fire, again, it's more of recon of what I have, what type of building I have, where the fire's at, which is very important, and then where the people are at. So we have to go 1, 2, 3. The people aren't, they're all simultaneous. The people aren't third, but I got to answer 1 and 2 before I get to 3, right? So if I know it's a longer stretch and I know that I'm limited staffed, it's only me and maybe another company 10 minutes away, maybe my Clorox bleach bottle full of rope thrown out the window, tied off with a line coming up, and my driver feeding a line out through the window like a maniac, maybe that works for us. And that gets us to where we need to be. And like you said, a lot of these buildings, they're not standpiped. So you're not fighting it like a high-rise fire or a standpipe building. You're breaching unconventional ways, but if it works, it works.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because that was one of our go-tos in some of the buildings that we had, where we had a Clorox bottle. And for people that don't understand what we're talking about, you get your Clorox bottle, clean it all out, obviously, and you cut a wedge out of it, so you can put 150 feet of maybe 8 millimeter prusik cord. We took a pool cue, drilled a hole through it, and then stuffed the rope through that, so we could just throw that down; it wouldn't get stuck. And then where that window is, your driver's going to pull a line over to you, and then you can just bring that dry line up into the apartment next door, bring in 150, 200 feet, get it all flaked out, tie it off, tell them to charge the line. Now you don't have to contend with, a 400 or 500 foot line. And, you can bring 2 lines in through a window, or you can bring it into the next apartment over or whatever. But yeah, that's like you said, it's unconventional thinking, but that should be something that we should be thinking about. And it's so cheap to make these tools. We throw away gallon bottles or milk jugs or whatever all the time. Go get some 8 mil prusik cord.
Every cleaning product in your house, probably in your firehouse, comes in that bottle. That's where we made ours. It was literally bleach bottle. That was a cleaning product. So we just cut it out. Same thing. And we have the cheapest carabiner you're ever going to see in your life that is not for anything than holding your keys on it, but it's right there, and you can clip right in the bail of the nozzle, right up.
And I tell people, get in good with your Lowe's, your Home Depot, or your Ace Hardwares or whatever. And when you come in uniform and you say, "Hey, look, we're trying to build something. We're a little limited on funds, but we're trying to do this so we can protect structure and this and that." We built a roof prop at my volunteer house, and we told them what we were doing. They said, "Look, man, we give stuff away to you guys. You just never come here. We write it off because it's a tax write-off. We got $800 worth of lumber and bolts and all kinds, shingles, tar paper, and we built this huge roof prop for free." So you get in with these people and you let them know what you're doing. You'd be surprised. They'll say, "Hey, how much 8 millimeter cord do you need? Or how much rope do you need?" You need about 100 feet. That's nothing to them.
No.
People are stealing more shit out of these buildings than them giving you 100 feet of hose or 100 feet of rope. So, build these things, put it on your apparatus. It doesn't take up any space, and then practice with it, train with it.
Yeah, get it out and just do them unconventional drills. Just get your guys in a mindset. Like I was always taught as a company officer, you train your people to function when you're not there, right? Like they don't need you. Like when you're off and there's a fire, like, hey, your guys, they call you. Your guys did great. So that's where you need to get yourself to be. Train your people to function when you're not there. So when they roll up to the garden-style apartment that has a setback, a courtyard, it's building Foxtrot in the rear, they already know whoever's there, on the radio and on the pedals, they know what to do. They're already going. Like they have a plan. It's all about pre-planning and get on your firehouse and just knowing your first two. It really is. And when you're there too, talk to the people in the complex. Meet the maintenance guy. Like, yo, what's going on in building here? What's going on over there? Where's your boiler room? Or where's your, where's the gas shutoffs? Where's all that stuff? A lot of the older ones, you'll see like the pre-World War II ones, they all have like storage in the basement that's like a chicken wired, like a gate that says like apartment 1, 2, 3. I've had 2 or 3 basement fires in there where that was off. And we knew where it was. They were like, it's in the basement where the storage is. We knew exactly where it was because we were there and pre-planned it.
Talking a little bit about pre-planning, you talked about the maintenance guy. When you get a fire in one of those, who are you looking for once this fire's out? You're looking for building management. You're looking for maintenance. Go meet these people before the emergency happens. Get their phone numbers. If they're not there, if they don't have an apartment there, but get their phone number so you can call them. Hey, we got a fire in here. We need you to come here, whatever. Or the management company. The management company leaves at 5 o'clock. Fire comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hey, we've got 3 or 4 people that need, or 3 or 4 families that need to be put up somewhere. We either get Red Cross or they probably have some apartments that they can move these people into. So get their phone numbers, put it in your map book for that particular complex, whoever the person's name is, write the telephone number next to it. So when they run these calls, you can just open it up. Hey, chief, the maintenance person's name is whatever, and here's his phone number, or he lives in apartment so-and-so, or here's the management company. This person's on call all the time. So, get those numbers. I want to transition into the final part we're talking about is, how do we keep the chief officers off your back so you can do your job? And I can say that lovingly because that is what I do. And I try to make sure that my guys are doing the job. But, as a chief officer, when you're sitting in the car and you're watching these fires happen, it's that you don't have that control, of what's going on inside. So I used to tell my guys, feed me information, even if it's hardly anything, so I know that you're making progress. What are some of the things that you're telling your command officers when you're getting in there to let them know that this is under control?
I immediately I want to let him know what we have. Like, hey, chief, fire's here. I'm working towards it. This is what I'm doing. Just like you said, a little tidbit. Like, hey, we're working a leader line, doing a 3/4 to this. Give me a minute. I'll get water on the fire. Or hey, it's over here or it's over there. Or hey, we need this. We need this on top of this. So a good way to, and I'm not saying to get the chief off your back, but if you know you're going in the right direction, but you need something else, tell him what you need and let him get it for you. I have a great battalion chief. I actually came on the job with him. He's a great man. And, we have a great working relationship. But if I tell him I need something, he's not worried about me anymore. He's worried about that.
Yeah, and that's important, coming from being inside the car, leaving the front of the fire engine or the ladder truck and transitioning into the command role, just giving me information like, hey, chief, looks like we got fire on the top floor. We're at the door now. We're getting ready to force it. Hey, chief, got the door open. We got an apartment charged with smoke. Just little things like that. And then come back. Hey, looks like we got a room off in the back. We're going to have water on the fire here in a second. And then you get a knock. Hey, chief, you got water on the fire. How's it look out there to you? And just that little bit of feedback. Or hey, chief, looks like we got a couple of rooms off this apartment. I'm going to need somebody over in the Bravo in the apartment next door. I'm going to need another engine company over there, probably a truck. They're going to have to force the door. And like you said, now that gives that chief, hey, all right, I'll take that off your hands. One of the other things that I tried to move forward with when I rolled up on the scene, I might make that engine captain, that Division II supervisor. Things that chief officers need to understand is when you give a unit officer a division, they're responsible for that whole division. It might be easy on a house, but when you're talking a second floor of a garden apartment, there might be 4 apartments up there. So you can't get factual information on what's going on in the other 3 apartments. You can only give me information of what's going on that. And you're not going to come off the line, leave your guy by himself so you can see what the other crews are doing. So what I like to do is initially I'm going to give you that division. And then when another chief officer arrives on the scene, I might move that guy forward before I put him in the car with me so I can take that burden off your shoulders so you can concentrate on what you're doing. That second chief officer should be hovering on that second floor landing and keeping an eye on what's going on the other floor, on the other apartments, and then give that information back to the incident commander. Hey, need another line up here or whatever. And now when I ask for a CAN report from that division officer, he's giving me good factual information of what's going on in all 4 apartments. And he might have to float up to the floor above if I don't have anybody up there.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been in both roles. Sometimes when you're a company officer and the chief's calling, you're like, this guy, like, give me a minute. I've always been, well, I didn't always, it took me a while to get there as a company officer. I always answer the chief. I always do. Even I'm like, can you give me a minute? Just give me a minute. Like, I feel like that open communication, it's a relationship. So communication's used in a relationship, right? So if you have that communication with him or her and say, can you just give me 1 minute? I'll get back to you in a second. What do you got? What's this? What's that? Because again, what they're seeing on the outside is not what you're seeing on the inside. And it could look a lot worse than it really is, but it's not. But maybe you need to do something or get a guy in place or hook a ceiling or open a door or a window, whatever it is. Hey, can you just give me a couple minutes here? I'll get right back to you. It looks good. Just give me a second. Or, hey, not looking good. Do this.
Yeah, and that's where you kind of get into the leadership role of that battalion chief needs to know his people. So I challenge these chief officers, hey, if you're a battalion officer or if you're a duty chief, like an assistant chief or whatever, you might be in charge of the county or the city for that day. You need to get in there and talk to your officers and get to know them. And for if you don't do anything else, give them your set of expectations, some simple expectations. Hey, when we run a house fire, I know you're going to be inside. I'm going to ask you give me an LCAN real quick. Just give me that good information real fast. I don't need a big dissertation, but just keep feeding me with information. And I promise I'll stay off your back. If it's not looking good, I might call you and just say, hey, the smoke's getting a little worse. What you got on the inside? And if I'm not going to bother you, but if you call me back and say, hey, chief, we're getting a line down the hallway, just give me a minute, I'm going to give you that time. So that's where, as incident commanders, as chief officers, get to know your officers, let them know what your expectations are, and then have them tell you what they expect of you as an incident commander. Like, hey, chief, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I do my job, but you have to let me do my job. And if I'm not doing it or things aren't looking right, let's have that conversation over the radio real fast.
I had a chief. We had a fire. It was last week, a week and a half ago, and there was resources all over the city being deployed. And we were the first two engine at a house fire. It was a good house fire. The second battalion got there. He's a great guy. And he called me on the radio, and he's like, you don't have to answer me right now, but I need to know this. And I was like, wow, that was really nice of him. Like, I don't have to answer him right now. I appreciate that. Like, I was in the middle of, getting my Nosman set up and peeling off and doing a search. He knew that because he's been in my spot. So he was like, you don't have to answer me right now, but I need this. And I was like, cool. He gave me like a 30-second buffer to move around, and then I answered them. I really appreciate that. I really did.
Yeah, and that's important that you, as a chief officer, you have to have been in those roles. You can't just have been an admin person your entire career and then jump into the incident command role and expect to know exactly what you're going through and start that's where you start getting all this firing these nitpicky questions. It's like, bro, let me do my job. But we do have people like that, and those chief officers need to understand their shortcomings and rely on their strong companies that, hey, this is what I want from you. This is what you'll get from me. And we'll work together and we'll make sure that the fire goes out. But yeah, definitely, for first 5-10 minutes with that first two engine company, you have your hands full, especially if you got a rookie on the line. You got to make sure that they're set up and they're getting that hose line down the hallway and things like that while you're banging out a search and figuring out all the other things that have to happen. So last thing that I want to wrap up, we want to talk about 360s. It's one of the things that's kind of hot and heavy in the fire service. It's always been a thing in the fire service, but I think we're really starting to get a lot more information on the 360, especially of we really want to, not to sound so cliche, but paint the picture of the areas that we can't see, so that chief officer can move the resources that are there. So what are you looking for if you're going to be doing a 360, if you have a standalone guard department, or you can only see three sides because, maybe the Delta side is another whole building? But what are some of the things that your chief's looking for you to say, and what information are you giving them to start driving this incident the right direction?
Well, the number one thing I'm thinking of is how can I get to the other side without running around the complex? Like, how can I shoot through an apartment? Can I force the first floor apartment that's not involved in the incident and go through the back door and get eyes on it? That's usually my thought when I always go to the rear, my fastest way. I do not want to run with my air pack on around the rear of a building. But when I get there, it's what's showing in the front versus what's showing in the rear. And also, if there's fire in the front, that might mean there's fire in the rear or smoke in the rear. So if there's fire in the front, the people that are egressing aren't going to go towards the fire. They're going to go opposite the fire because that's human nature. So I'm making sure there's nobody hanging out the rear windows. Like, do we need a portable ground ladder here? Because if there's fire showing, nobody there but me, people hanging out the windows, I need to put my hose line down and I need to get ground ladders to the rear and get them out of the building immediately. Like, that's an immediate situation. Then also, what's the fastest way I'm getting the ground ladders there? It's like your mind's always got to be thinking of not only getting there, but what's the most advantageous way that's not going to kill me getting there.
And then some of the things as a command officer we're looking at is, where are the utilities at that? I can get that information later. It's not imperative that you tell me right now as I'm coming down the road, but I can get that information later. But you throw that, hey, we got gas on the Charlie side, or we got gas on the Bravo side, or whatever. something that I can file away that, hey, maybe I need to shut those things off. Biggest thing is you may have terrace apartments that only exit on the Charlie side
Yep.
and don't come out on
Yep.
the front, and you might have smoke coming up from those bottom levels, and having to actually take that line around to the Charlie side instead of trying to go in through the front. That might be where that fire is. So getting an understanding of what we got back there. Do we have apartments that only exit through the Charlie side? That we need to get into and check. And you see a lot of that in those townhome type condominiums where
Yeah.
you actually have 2 stories up top and maybe one large building down below, or one large apartment down below. And then the last thing I want to talk about is number and floors. And that's kind of gotten us hemmed up a couple of times, especially when we had Mayday situation. If somebody falls through the floor, you roll up on the scene, it might look like a 2-story garden apartment in the front, but they're terrace, so it might be 3 stories in the rear. The biggest thing that's going to throw people off is how is that basement labeled? That basement might be labeled 1.
Yep.
And then you go in through the front door and you're in apartment 21, and then above is 31, but you're only on the second floor. So now you're starting to, am I on the division 2 now? You're the division 2 supervisor working in apartment 3. I ran into a situation with that where ultimately another chief said, maybe we can think about this: fire floor, floor above, floor below. And then we'll sort that out later. So if I know you're operating on the fire floor, I don't care what apartment it is, you're on the fire floor. And then we'll sort it out later on. And if you label something like, if I say, hey, I need you up on the second floor, you're going to be the division 2 supervisor. And say, okay, yeah, we got a fire in apartment 32. I'm not going to relabel that to division 3. I'm going to keep it at division 2, and I'm going to make sure everybody on the fire ground knows that, hey, all the apartments that are labeled in the 300 series is division 2. So everybody knows that. So if somebody falls through the floor, they didn't fall from the third floor to the second floor. They fell through from the second floor to the first floor.
And
that makes sense.
It's a communication thing, Chief. And I appreciate that, because I as the first 2 company officer, that might not even be in my mind. I'm just trying to get to the fire, and like you said, the first floor is maybe a sub level down. So I'm going the sub level down, and I'm on the fire floor, and you're talking to me like, Bobby, where you at? And I'm like, I'm on the, I don't know, I'm in the basement, or I'm on the first floor, and you're like, all right, well, we're going to call you fire floor. Great. Now I know. Hey, fire floor. Okay. I think one of the greatest things that a chief officer can do for a company officer is take some stress off their back and let them focus on the firefight, just by, like you said, naming the floor for them. Hey, Squad 7, we're going to call you fire floor command. No problem. Fire floor command from now on, floor above command, whatever. And just keep it simple. As soon as we get, as unpacks, if we're going like defensive and it doesn't work out for us, absolutely, let's expand IMS and get wild. But if we know we got this fire, let's keep it very simple, especially for a Mayday situation, because like you said, somebody falls through a floor or they're jammed up in a back bedroom. Hey, I'm on the floor above. Now we know where the floor above is, and we know where that exact location is, and we can get resources in that direction.
Yeah, and that's why I had said earlier, I want to take that stress off your shoulders of making you that division supervisor throughout the entire job. If I get that second chief officer or a third chief officer to rise on the scene, I'm going to put them in a forward position. They're going to come make contact with you and say, hey, I'm taking over this division. You're like, cool, I can only focus now. I can focus on my guys and let that chief officer take over that whole area. Now I can talk to him. His hands are a little more free. He can see what's going on. He might say, hey, look, they're in a sub level. The apartments are labeled, 11, 12, 13, and 14. We'll continue to call this fire floor, or we're going to call this division 1, or we'll call it the basement level, or whatever. Let those chief officers sort it out. But it takes that stress off of you so you can concentrate on putting that fire out.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's in the fire service, especially when we have a working incident, the more simple you can make it for everybody, the more streamlined it is, and the more easier it is to operate, and just people are moving freely because they can just register something very quickly in their mind and focus on it.
Yep. So we're at the 1 hour mark. So just closing it out. You got to get out into your first due area, especially if you have these apartment buildings, or even if you don't. You got to get out in your first due area. You need to know the neighborhoods. You need to know the little idiosyncrasies of your apartment complexes. Who the management company is, who are these the maintenance workers and things like that. How far away are you from, if you had a fire in this building, what size lines are we going to use? Do we have the tools on the apparatus to take a line up through a window. I'm not a big fan of taking a line up an aerial ladder. I don't like tying an aerial ladder up with a hose line. I might take it up there to begin with, but I'm going to kick it off and it's just going to come through. Taking that rope down.
I'm right there with you on that one.
Taking the rope down the thing is something that we're going to want to do.
No, thanks for having me. Again, the best way to learn is to get out of your firehouse and just learn your district and just see what's going on. Check these buildings out. Not only talk to the maintenance men, but I'll tell you what, if you talk to the residents, you get a lot of good inside information what's going on inside these complexes. Just be really nice to them. Let them know it's not a fire inspection. You're just there to check the place out, and being visible to the residents is something that I really take near and dear to my heart, and I think they appreciate it. Thanks for having me. If you want to follow me on social media, it's Eckert_335 on Instagram. And I have an open enrollment coming up for a building construction lecture via Zoom July 1st, admin at EckertFireTactics.com. And EckertFireTactics.com gets us through all our stuff. We got a bunch of stuff coming up in the fall. And I really appreciate it, Chief. It was a great conversation.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you coming on. And don't forget, if you still got any of your books left, I know you've written at least 3 volumes of those.
I got volume 3 is dropping. I'm hoping to have it for sale in September. I'm just I'm working on pictures. You got to get the photographers to sign the paperwork to use their picture. That's what I'm working on.
Yep. So good stuff. A lot of training tips and things like that on there. So again, Bobby, thanks for coming on the show. I truly appreciate it. And, I'll definitely have you on again. We'll talk a little bit more about some building construction and talk about some bread and butter fires and different things, whether it be row houses, townhouses, and things like that. So be safe and keep doing what you're doing. Like seeing your stuff. Have a good one.
Thank you. Likewise, Chief.